Welcome to the big event, or the big get-together. This is something that's been in the planning for quite a few months, and we're really excited about it, and so pleased to see so many of you here. I need to do a couple of introductions because I know there's some new people that have joined this afternoon. So those that were here for the AGM, just bear with me for a moment. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Carol Hooper, and I'm chair of the Board of Trustees. I'm going to sit in the room today, and the far right, we've tucked them away, are the trustees and your board. Jenny Willison, Jack Paul, James Wilson, Paul Wayne, and we have Mark, who's sitting in there with the team. And Lee will undoubtedly come back in the room on cue in about 4 minutes and do a dance as he goes across. So we have a board of trustees. We also have some wonderful guests from the States, Maureen and Nancy from GBS CIDP Foundation International, who have been instrumental in helping us get this event off the ground. It wouldn't have happened without them, so we owe them huge thanks. And we also have with us Glenys Sanders, our founder. We have Professor Richard Hughes, one of our patrons, and online we have Sir Ian McFadden, who's also one of our patrons, which has also made me realise I've got two trustees that are online, which is Sean Austin and Steph Parker. So apologies, guys, I haven't forgotten you really. So we've got a lot of good things that are going to happen today. We're excited to bring it together. It's the community, as we see it, in terms of experience, knowledge, medical people, volunteers, those with lived experience. And it's the community that we have at the moment that we are looking to build. And I think that's the theme that you're going to see as we go through the afternoon. It's very much about the future. The AGM this morning was focusing on where we've been in the last 12 months. So this is about the future. Rich is going to step up first and start to share those thoughts and his vision. It's about us working together, and we do mean us, because we can't do this on our own. We're a small team, and look at the resource we have in here. We need input, and we want to make sure that we're focusing on the things that you want us to focus on. And it's also building and celebrating the community we have. So I mentioned at the AGM this morning, it's been a time of significant change for us. And we know that some of those changes are starting to be seen and felt by all of you. But now is the time to start accelerating. We really want to make some big, significant strides in the next 12 months so that we feel that we're making progress, but also the people that we are supporting can actually feel it too. So as I say, Rich is going to share details on our thoughts and plans for the future. We want to get everybody involved, so it is going to be interactive. Don't think that you've had your lunch and you can sit down and have a little snooze, because that's not the case. We've got some interactive sessions, but I hasten to add, we're not going to put anybody on the spot, so please don't feel that you're going to be singled out, but we want to hear from you. We've got some great guest speakers. We've got the team, our medical advisory board. They will be stepping up their first up for us after Rich. We have Stephanie from Rare Minds, who is going to be talking to us about the emotional well-being. And we've got some information on latest clinical research from the MAB, and Stephanie, as I say, is the emotional side. We wanted to bring you information, current and sort of what's ongoing, so that you start to feel more informed about the conditions that impact you. And I'm one of those too. I'm very interested to hear that as a GBS sufferer. We've also got time dedicated for our partners. I think it's important that we do hear from Maureen and Nancy about the work of GBS and CIDP and our working relationship with them, which is growing all of the time. And I can't forget the fact that we are going to allow some time to hear from our volunteers, who are the absolute backbone of their support. So we've got some time for our volunteers as well. So it's a busy few hours, lots of good content, a chance for you all to express thoughts, views, opinions, and importantly, to help start shaping the future of what gaming is going to look like. So thank you so much. Please participate, because that's what's going to make the afternoon work. And I'll hand you over to Rich.
So I'm going to talk all about the future of gain and what I think. So we can have the next one. I'm not a strategy guy. I was brought in to look at strategy. I haven't looked at much strategy yet because we've been doing lots and lots of work around kind of the day-to-day running of the organisation. But it's really, really important for me to kind of hear what everyone thinks from the board, through the medical advisory board, through our partners, and most importantly, from the people we support, to feed into what it's going to look like in the future. So we are in a year of development and growth. This morning, we talked about last year. This is all about what we're doing next year. So we're all talking about how we're going to develop, how we're going to grow. We are putting together a new organisational strategy. I sat down with the board online. We had a very good series of meetings to collect the information. We did a listening exercise that Carol talked about earlier, where we captured loads of information from everybody and people fed into it. So you've got lots of information, and it's going to be evolving as we move forward and look at what that means for the organisation. We're doing huge amounts of work around new communication and engagement plans. That's part of what Chris has been brought in to do, is to try and support the development of that. We've got a task and finish group with the trustees who look specifically at it. We're going to get a new website. We're looking at our social media, and hopefully people have seen an improvement in that since January. But we're looking at more and more to build on how we reach people, and that's a theme that will come through. We're developing our core support offer, something Carol talked about earlier as well. I'm going to leave that one for the next slide because this is all about support. For me, this is the main thing we're here for, is to support people. So it's our primary function. It's our core thing we do. And we need to, in my view, we need to do it better. And we're going to do a new financial strategy. So we're looking at how we spend that money. So you heard all about the money earlier on. It's quite clear to recognise that there is some money there. We need to make sure we use it properly and effectively and appropriately. So we're going to put a financial strategy in to how we spend against 3 core areas. And those 3 core areas, the first one is support. So it's our main thing we do. We're going to continue to move, and this is something we've been working on since January. It's something that Claire, who is the one who you normally speak to when you go, unless she's not there, then get me. Is we've been moving away from what I think was a signposting service. What we did is we picked up the phone and we said, we'll point you towards somebody else. And that's not what we're doing anymore. We pick the phone up and say, who are you? How are you? What can we do to help? And then we build a relationship and we work with people to find what people need. And then we meet it. Now, we can't do everything. Claire's great, but she doesn't know everything in the world. So we do need to signpost to other people, and that's fine. But we always check first to see if we can do it first and move from there. That's about being person-centered. We want to go to a really person-centered service, something that's built around people, and making sure that we find out what people's needs is, and then we meet it. We're doing huge amounts of work around volunteers. We're going to say it now. I think we've let down all of our volunteers in the past. We haven't communicated properly. We haven't supported. We haven't trained. And we're changing that. There's a huge piece of work we're doing at the minute into building new systems and new services. John's going to talk a little bit about some of that later because he's helping out in terms of developing some of that. And there's a lot to do. But what we want to do is we want to build on what is really, really effective and excellent peer support, which is working really, really well. We want more of that happening, but we also want volunteers to do other things as well. Bike running, local get-togethers. Those local groups, you remember this bunch of guys, that's our Lancashire and Cumbria group. They're amazing. They're fantastic. But you know what? They're the only one who survived COVID out of all our groups. John set up, since then, he set up Leeds, he set up York, got 2 more groups. I've got, how many, 16 have I got? Was it on a list of other potential groups to come forward? People want these. We need to make sure it happens, but I need to put the infrastructure in place to support it. And the board have made the decision that we will support these groups. We'll fund them. We'll support them to do what they need to do so we can reach more people and support them. But to do that, we need volunteers who are trained and are able to do that effectively and supported to do that from us, for those who are online from that group, from head office, mystical head office. We need to work more with clinicians and medical professionals and organisations linked to more people. We heard about it earlier. Gordon mentioned it. He goes out and talks to people. We need that. We need volunteers going out and doing that like they used to do and speaking more. But most importantly, this is the bottom line here. It's really, really, really important, and it's our biggest issue by far. We need to increase our reach and our impact. Our reach is not good enough. There's lots and lots of people with GBS, with CIDP, with MMN, with other conditions who do not know we exist. That's simply not good enough. We're not going to reach everyone. It's impossible. We need to reach more. We reach more people. We support more people. Our impact is better, and that's our job. Sorry. Next one. So that's support. Sorry, there is a danger that I'll start soapboxing, and get going, get passionate. Bear with me. If it is, I'm looking at this group here to calm you down, calm down and sit down. Right, research. We need a research strategy. We haven't got one. So at the minute, we heard earlier, we invested money in clinical research, but that was a legacy. That was from a while back. So that money got spent, but there isn't anything in the pipeline at the minute. And I'm not an expert in clinical research. I don't know what to invest in. My medical advisory board do. Professor Richard Hughes knows. You kind of know as well. Everybody knows. But we need that fed in so we can make sure we invest properly. And like Sean said earlier, it's really easy to invest lots of money very quickly, but we need to be effective and wise. We need to build something. So we need to identify and fund more clinical research, and that might mean competitions, it might mean commissions for doing that kind of work, but we need to do it. But we also, and this is really important to me, we also need to develop social research projects. And I spent how many hours yesterday? I lost track. A lot of hours with colleagues from the foundation looking at potential joint social research projects that we can look at. And we're going out to the global community, not just the UK and Ireland community, which is my remit, but the global community, to ask people what their priority is, what's important to you. So we can then look at what we fund, what we do. We can do some social research and find out a bit more about the really important things that matter to people impacted by these conditions. We can get the research, we can get the data, we can get the information, and that will help us build projects to actually meet that, whether they're pilots, whether they're one-off things that get us more information, but it's all about impact. We can find it out more. And then we fund and facilitate those projects. We've got the funding to do that. We've aligned the budgets. We've got money. We're looking to actually spend that down a little bit, but we've got a lot of money there. What we don't want to do is spend it all willy-nilly. It's a terrible expression, which I wish I had used. But what we do need to do is target it appropriately and really spend that money well on some really meaningful pieces of work. And finally, raising awareness. This is really important. I said earlier, we need to reach more people. I mean, how many people here struggled to find us when they had their condition? Yeah, they'll go, whoa, no. I mean, it was a rhetorical question. I know the answer. It's really difficult to find us. And that's part of what that branding and identity piece of work is that we're doing at the minute. Please remember to fill that in. I believe one person has done it. So can we make sure that we all do, please? And if you need me to bring you things and talk people through it, then I will. In fact, I'll put some copies on all the tables. We've got to develop more effective communication, because at the minute we're not effectively communicating. People don't know they can't find us. And when they do, we don't always communicate in really easy ways. Co-production and engagement, I've got a career on this. This is about talking to people. First thing I did, listening exercise on people. It doesn't work. If I come in and go, these are my ideas, you lot are going to go, who's this idiot? Coming in here with these fancy sapping ideas, it won't work. So it's all about listening to people and actually taking that on board and doing something with it. And we will do that. We promise to do that. We are doing it. And then we need to make sure people, including medical professionals, and that's not you guys, because you know about this, but many, many others, particularly GPs and A&E doctors, which is where we seem to get most issues coming from, that they actually know about these conditions. They're aware about them. And not just those conditions, about us, and they can pull people towards us, which is a big gap. If you know about us, you know about us, you tell your patients about us. If you never heard of us, how can you pass that on? We need to about what we're doing it. So the three areas. I forgot about this slide. Not all about me, but it is. My vision. So I came in with this is what I want to do. I want GAIN to become known as an organisation that meets the need of its communities, that we actually go out and meet those needs, and that we're known amongst our peers as an exemplar example of good practice, so that all of our peer organisations look at us and go, those guys are good, we should copy them. That's what I'm after. We really, really, really need to meet people's needs. Otherwise, what's the flipping point of having this organisation if it's not meeting the needs of the people we are here to support? I promise you that is what we will do. And I tell you, you can hold me to account for that. If we aren't doing that, you tell these guys, let me get rid of me. Because I absolutely promise that's what we will do. So, this is what I want you to do. I just talked about 3 things. Remember, support, research, raising awareness. On your tables, there are post-it notes. I want you to put down what you think are the most important things about support.
So the first thing to say is thank you so much for holding this meeting today. It's really, really lovely to be back in person because we used to have meetings in person and then everything started to go online and then COVID happened. And it really makes a difference to be able to talk to people in the room. That's both the trustees, but patients, new members, new people coming for the first time. But obviously online is brilliant to have as a hybrid for those that can't come in the room. So we've got the best of both worlds. And that was a delicious lunch. So hopefully not going to all fall asleep now, actually, it was a lovely lunch. So I'm going to introduce all of us. So we have quite a big medical advisory board these days. I'm Jane Pritchard. I'm a neurologist here in London at Imperial College, and I've been on the MAB since about 2001. I'm studying a PhD in Guillain-Barré with Richard Hughes. Rob, on the far left, is going to be speaking in a little bit. He is also a neurologist in London at King's College, also having done a PhD with Richard Hughes. And then more recently, Amy will introduce her. Amy has flown down from Glasgow today to be with us today with a strong interest in Propulner. You can introduce in a bit more detail. And Tim has come from Manchester on train, also with a consultant neurologist. And he ran from Euston to here this morning, and I saw him in shorts ahead of me and was shouting Tim, and he was on the ground. And Anna is back there on the table at the back, so a wave out from Anna, who has also come down from Glasgow. Okay, we've got other members of the MAB who are not able to be here today. We have Shakti Agrawal, who's a paediatric neurologist in Birmingham. Paediatric neurology is a much smaller specialty than adult neurology. So we're very lucky to have a paediatric neurologist within GAIN. Claire is a physiotherapist at King's College, although right now she's in Australia on a sort of 6-month sabbatical. Again, a specialist neurophysio, but has done a lot of research into Guillain-Barré and exercise, which is quite unusual. So neurophysios are also quite rare, particularly to have someone interested in Guillain-Barré and other inflammatory neuropathies. And we've got a new neuromuscular specialist now, Happy Prescott, who works at the Walton Centre in Liverpool. So it's fabulous to have her along. And then we've got 2 more neurologists who are now both professors, Mike Lunn and Simon Rinaldi. And Mike is at Green Square and has been a member of the MAB for a long time. And Simon is in Oxford. And both of them do a lot of research into inflammatory neuropathies, but it's half term, so they couldn't be here today. So apologies, but they normally would have been, I'm sure. Okay, so what we thought we'd do, so you meet all of us a little bit, is we just do a few minutes each on each of the categories. So just talking a bit about GBS. I've put this up because zebras are rare, but they're quite characteristic. And Guillain-Barré is probably a little bit like that. It's rare. You will have all found that you didn't meet many people who had GBS, perhaps until you joined GAIN, or you made contact with GAIN, or until you were diagnosed with GBS. You probably had never heard of it. You probably never met anyone with it. We all get taught about it. Embarrassingly enough, at medical school, I think my nickname was the Queen of the Zebras, because I liked to rare stuff. So it's no surprise if I ended up being interested in GBS. But you have to know what a zebra looks like in order to be able to recognise. And if you've never come across a zebra or heard of a zebra, you're not going to know that a zebra is a zebra. So, one gets taught about it at medical school. Now, some people, when they're on that brief neurology attachment that's these days might only be 2 weeks in my trust, they might be lucky enough to have met a patient with GBS, but they might not. So unsurprisingly, when people then go out and work in other jobs or become a GP, they may never have seen anyone with GBS. And because your average GP looks after about 1,000 patients, they might only ever give one patient with GBS, and that might be you in their whole career. So if they get the diagnosis, they've done brilliantly. And if they don't get the diagnosis, they have not done disastrously, because it's hard to spot something you've never come across ever in your life. So we need to make sure people are aware of it, and it is definitely taught in medical school. But we need to try and increase awareness as much as we can. Rich mentioned there the A&E doctors. A&E doctors definitely have it as part of their curriculum. But the same thing happens. If they've never seen it, they might be taught about it in theory. That is so different from having seen it in practice. But we just have to keep plugging away, making sure as many people get exposed to GBS and other neuropathies as possible. And it's really difficult in the early stages. I'm sure a lot of you may have had the experience where perhaps initially people couldn't make sense of your symptoms, and it wasn't until it became really obvious that the diagnosis was made. And it can be difficult in the early days. So we've got some nice diagnostic criteria. And every few years or so, there's a new set of guidelines on how to diagnose it. But the most recent one, which was I think from last year, was joint between the European Academy of Neurology and the Peripheral Nerve Society. And it's a lovely set of guidelines, which includes authors well known to this group, including Rob, Mike, and Hugh Willison, who was a member of the MAB for many, many years, but has recently retired within the last year, very much missed. But it's got really good guidance for everything about symptoms, diagnosis. But I thought the good practice points which were interesting that were highlighted was that GBS is definitely more likely if you've recently had an infection, particularly diarrhea of your chest or a chest infection. The absolute essential part of the diagnosis is you have to have had clinical progression and weakness in your arms and legs for over less than 4 weeks, typically with reduced or absent reflexes. It's advisable to have nerve conductor studies to confirm the problems in the peripheral nerves, and lumbar puncture is useful. Classically, have a raised protein, but not cell count. And a small minority of patients go on to have relapsing symptoms and subsequently get diagnosed with CIDP, which is a more chronic condition. Okay. And then there are some symptoms that clinically make us think GBS is more likely, including symmetry, sensory symptoms, but not necessarily very severe numbness, weakness of the face, altered pulse and blood pressure, which is autonomic symptoms, and respiratory muscle weakness. And often patients have pain at the start, which is due to the root inflammation. Going against GBS would be asymmetry, respiratory symptoms worse than the living symptoms, any particularly dramatic sensory loss, and fever early on, or lateral bowel movements. Now, I'm going to hand over to Amy, who's going to introduce herself and then talk about the current treatment in GBS, standard treatment, but also some of the new treatments and next thoughts.
Hi everyone, I'm Evie Davidson. I am a neurologist in Glasgow. And nice of Jane to have met a few months in. So he was my mentor and worked under Hugh and did my research under him, and actually was involved in a clinical trial using a new drug in patients with Guillain-Barré. So that's why they've asked me to come and do a little bit about treatment talk today. So I'm going to talk about just now, what do we do currently? And really what we do currently is what we've done for decades. There hasn't really been a big shift in the dial of what we've done since the 1980s, 1990s. So you guys will know because you'll have been through it. The most common treatment is this immunoglobulin. So it's a blood product that's from other people that we give to try and reduce the inflammation. And the alternative to that, which has kind of equal efficacy, is something called plasma exchange. And that's the blood washing where you get the cycles and we take your immune system out of your blood effectively and try and encourage the nerves to heal themselves over time. I think that's the important point to know about the treatment. So at the moment, we can't heal your nerves. What we're trying to do with the treatments in Guillain-Barré is stop this inflammation, so stop the inflammation damaging the nerves further. But once the nerves are damaged, what we're trying to do with the treatments is give them the best environment to recover themselves. So you can have this really fast catastrophic onset, as Jane was saying, within 4 weeks, but then people in this room who've had Guillain-Barré will know the offset is very different, you know, and it takes a long time and usually a lot of rehabilitation and input to try and recover, because we can't do anything to help with the nerves as it stands. And then that's just thinking about how we're treating inflammation of the nerves as well. But I think it's important to bear in mind when we're thinking about treating patients with Guillain-Barré, yes, we want to treat this inflammation in the nerves, but there's other things happening with the patient alongside this inflammation in the nerves. Inflammation in the nerves cause a lot of pain, so we have to think about that, you know, really seriously from the start. We have to think about if there's changes in blood pressure and the pulse, how we're treating that and where we're treating these patients, you know, in medical wards versus higher dependency wards and these kind of considerations when we're thinking treatments. And then we also need to think about who are patients once we're given these treatments who aren't doing well. Why are you not doing well? Is there something different about your Guillain-Barré syndrome compared to the kind of more typical Guillain-Barrés? And I think we're learning more about that field as well. So Simon Rinaldi sits on the board just looking to slightly different inflammatory neuropathies that can look like GBS that affect something called the paranode. And don't worry, we're not just going to take you to our science, but can we start identifying these patients? And can we influence treatment at that point? So lots of different things that I think we need to be thinking about. But as I said, I'll move on. This is, don't worry, a very busy slide, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we've got the current treatments. And really, you can see it. But we're really trying to do with the treatments just now is we think that a lot of Guillain-Barré, or certainly the one that we recognise the mechanism is quite often there can be antibodies involved, so part of the immune system. And so we are either trying to get rid of that with immunoglobulins or plasma exchange just now. But what I wanted to illustrate is there's other things going on in the immune system. So we've got other targets. And so the drug trial, unfortunately, that I was involved in, and a Japanese group also did a similar drug trial, was looking at a different part of the immune system called the complement cascade, and that was using a C5 inhibitor, and neither trial had a positive outcome. But that's not to be disheartened, because we're still interested in that part of the immune system. And I'll go and talk about that a little bit in a minute, because if you go further up, if you intervene earlier in that cascade, it looks like actually you might be able to have a positive effect. And then we're looking at other drugs. Can we affect other parts of the nervous system? And is that going to have, can we stop this inflammation? And all of these kind of on the top above the pink are all thinking about trying to stop the inflammation in the nerves as a target. What we haven't got to yet, and what I think is a big area of interest throughout all kind of degenerative neurological disorders, is there any way that we can protect the nerves? And that's starting to come more to the forefront as well. So, when we are taking down this inflammation, can we protect the nerve, or can we repair the nerves in any way? So just to give you a kind of indication that things are ongoing. And what does that look like kind of clinically? Well, there are ongoing trials, some in their earlier phases than others. So efgartigimod, I don't know, we'll talk about that more in CIDP a little bit later. But that is a treatment that we use in other screen. Is it interesting in Guillain-Barré? So that again works on antibodies, trying to kind of cleave down and stop this kind of antibody response. So that's in a trial that's ongoing just now. And then there's a new treatment. So I talked about this complement. Don't worry too much about it. It's just part of the immune system. But we realised if you go in slightly higher up at an earlier level, it looked like they had good evidence that we can, it was a more effective treatment for Guillain-Barré. And they've actually just completed a new trial, and it's had a positive result on its phase 3. So I'll show you again, lots of information here. But the take home is it was a trial that was mainly conducted in Bangladesh and the Philippines, and sometimes they have GBS that clinically is a bit different. But when they looked at the subsets, you still saw the subset that we saw here, so it looks like there could be efficacy. But the other thing to notice here is that we have treatments in the UK, so we can give you immunoglobulins and we can give you plasma exchange. In countries like Bangladesh and the Philippines, you don't always have access to treatment. So this was against placebo rather than our best practice. So I don't know if we're going to see this the same level of improvements that we've seen. But that's not to, and this is all kind of unpublished stuff, so it has to all go through peer review. This was things that were being presented at conference. but that's just brilliant. You know, we have moved the needle. We've actually found positive, a new drug that's going to do something in patients with Guillain-Barré. So, I've been a bit of a Debbie Downer there about it, but I don't think, we're all delighted that we've seen something, and there's a very good forward and exciting impact here. And then really, so don't worry about this. This was just when we're starting to think about more neuroprotective things. I was saying nobody's having any thoughts about that. That's not quite true. There are some things, and then we realise there's other parts of the nervous system beyond just tackling this inflammation in the immune system. We go further into the nerves. We're starting to have a greater understanding that there's areas that we can maybe target that are going to be neuroprotective, but we can get involved in at this point, very early stages, that this is animal model stuff. But I want to just think of the whole spectrum of things that might be common and available. And that was really what I was going to say about don't worry about that. We don't need to get into mouse modelling at this stage in the game, but effectively, we have treatments that we know are effective in inflammation, and we've got good treatments. I mean, we are very lucky in the UK to have access to them. But we are actually now, with our greater understanding of what's happening in Guillain-Barré, beginning to move the needle and having an idea of other targets and things that we can move forward. It's really great. And I just want to reinforce that we're in actually quite a positive and moving forward time when it comes to GBS and GBS treatments. There's other ongoing trials as well, there's things that we're looking at. So, watch this space. So next time I come and speak to you, I might have big words. I'm going to pass on to Tim, because now we're going to switch from GBS to CIDP.
Hello everyone, and I'm not going to tell anyone my nickname from medical school, Jane. Getting started. So I'm Tim, I'm a neurologist in Manchester. I've been interested in pulmonary disease as well. So I'm going to just briefly talk about background of CIDP and chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy neuropathy. Bit of a mouthful to say, but just to kind of summarise, I think people think about it as the chronic version of GBS, and whilst there are some truths to that, there's also quite often it's obviously very different. First of all, is the time course. So this is a condition which will progress over 8 weeks. That can be a rapid progression over 8 weeks, to the point where people are very disabled. Well, that could be considerably slower in some cases where it could come on slowly over a few more years. What we are talking about, what is similar to GBS, is progressive, largely symmetrical weakness, which will have proximal. We'll talk about proximal around the shoulder, around the here, and also some distal weakness affecting the hands, affecting the feet, causing for a stroke to alter. So in addition to that, it is a motor and what we call sensory process, and with sensory modalities and perceptual analysis which are involved. And actually, interestingly about this, again, we talked about how if you have very profound sensory loss of presentation, it can be a little bit typical of GBS. And because largely what we're talking about here is in terms of the sensory loss that we lose, is this what we call joint visual sense. So my left arm is up here, my finger's pointing downwards. I'm aware of that not because I'm looking at it, because of the sensory information just coming out and tells me it's moved up. So those people who are sat in the bed being examined by a neurologist may have that slightly weird thing where we're moving your toe up and down and asking this up or down, and that's essentially what we are testing. And that is what we call a large fiber component neuropathy. It's an essential we see in CIDP. It can lead often, sometimes I find some misdiagnosis early doors. People walk funny, and everyone thinks they're a bit mad. But they're not mad. What they've got is they've got a lack of sensation in their feet. Okay, and that is leading them to get more balance when they're walking. They can have a funny walk. On the bed, people might miss out on examinations and aren't expert in the condition. Going to the education talk about. Again, similar to that, we also have the concept of reduced or absent reflexes, tendon reflexes, to suggest it's a nerve problem, not a brain problem. And these are key to the typical CIDP diagnosis. Now, neuroinduction studies are important. So we talked about how in GBS, you can largely make that diagnosis quite quickly, quite early, on the basis of the CSF analysis. In CIDP, nerve conduction studies are a much more important part of your diagnostic criteria. And we often see what we call slowing of conduction. So it's a slow impulse down because the myelin sheath is the wire to the kettle. When you lose the conduction around a wire, you will have a slower conduction along that wire. So what we've got here is the myelin sheath, which is affected, getting slower conduction down that nerve. So there are important things to think about the CIDP. So it has mimics, and some quite important mimics. And Amy's touched upon this already. So this evolving group of disorders that we term the autoimmune neuropathies. And what they demonstrate is a lack of IVIG response. So these patients will have no IVIG response, they can progressively get worse, but you can't use rituximab in those conditions with good effect. It's a different medication, it's a biological treatment used in things like rheumatoid arthritis and many conditions. They have a good effect, basically permanent or remission. So they need to support people aware of them, but that increasingly they are checked in patients who present with what appears to be typical CIDP. There's a long list here, I won't go through everything, but important things which are associated with hematological disorders, especially forms of called paraproteinemic states, where people have an excess of a certain component of your immune system. They can be elevated and they can lead to a variety of different neuropathies which look very similar to CIDP. So again, they should be investigated for a diagnosis and treated in a very different way. Increasingly, we are finding lots of genetic disorders. Like traditionally, when you think about genetic disorder, you think about someone who's a child in their 20s, their 30s, they've got polyneuropathy, and they have, it's quite evident that condition is there. But increasingly, I'm not sure evidence what it's all found that within the widening of access to genetic testing, we're increasingly finding patients who have been diagnosed with CIDP for a number of years, and they actually carry a genetic mutation called Charcot-Marie disease, which is a genetic inherited disorder. So increasingly, that's forming part of our investigation of patients who appear to have CIDP. And certainly something which is treatment resistant or it is slower, longer onset, irrespective of age. Moving down, there are variants of CIDP. So we touched on the typical CIDP there, symmetrical, affecting shoulders, hips, all the way through, very weak, wobbly bowels. Whereas we have patients who may just present with distal weakness, just from their ankles. Patients who present with multifocal CIDP, so it's quite asymmetrical. They just affect left upper limb, right upper limb. They may affect focal one limb, just on one side. It may affect maybe, if it's motor only, there is a variant condition called multifocal motor neuropathy, which is slightly different, but is still IVIG responsible, but it's an important to recognize. But also, and there are some sensory variants as well. Again, care needs to be taken about diagnosis. It's a tricky one to make. But we have these increasing variants and mimics of CIDP, which you should be aware of when we're making our nexus. Big one. Yeah. So in terms of treatment for CIDP, again, there are some common aspects to Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is important differences. So the first line treatment is IVIG, which you already mentioned, which is, it has a good response rate in about 70 to 80% patients, 70% of patients will have a good response to IVIG, first line treatment. But steroids can be also very effective. In some patients can good response rate is about 50-60% of patients as well. So that differs from GBS. Steroids are a good treatment option in CIDP. But it's important because patients can go into remission spontaneously with their CIDP. It's very important that patients have trials of when we take that treatment away to see if they still have activities. If they do not have activities, we're giving them a treatment potentially side effects, which is actually causing nothing but potential harm from giving patients any benefit in terms of their walking or their balance. So patients may have gone through that, so even consultants may have gone through that process. I appreciate it's difficult, but at the moment it's an important thing to do until we get better ways of monitoring the disease than simply just neuropathic remission. So can we give IVIG subcutaneously in CIDP? That's been proven. So you might better expand on GBS. Now, who else it must be down?
Sorry.
And how available that is an option. Now, let's bring a slide to show me.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Thanks. So, again, I've talked about steroids already, and plasma exchange is an important one to touch upon again. So, we talked about plasma exchange having good evidence in GBS, as good evidence in CIDP as well. The problem is this is a chronic disorder that will involve plasma exchange longer term to try and maintain people in remission. So we would tend, given the difficulty of administration, the evidence required around plasma exchange, to not choose it first line, but it is an option for some patients if you have everything in place in your local unit to do it safe and appropriate manner. Now, again, if those don't work, those established treatments, going back to the mimics and going back to what we just talked about, you really have to rethink the diagnosis. The misdiagnosis of CIDP is actually quite common, and that's largely because of the histological tests, which can look very typical, but there are other conditions which can look like CIDP, which always important on our mind So again, that is standard treatment at the minute, but I'll just pass on to Rob, because Rob will now go through what the potential futures to look like in terms of the treatment of CIDP. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rob Haddon. I'm a neurologist at King's College Hospital, London, and also on the GAIN Medical Advisory Board. So it's great to meet so many of you here. And if we could have the next slide, please. I'm going to talk a bit about research, particularly in CIDP. And we're grateful to GAIN Charity for having contributed money towards paying for some new international guidelines for both GBS and CIDP. And I was on the group of international experts who were writing these guidelines. One of the issues with research is there's so much of it. There are thousands and thousands of medical papers published every year, and general doctors can't be expected to have time to read them all. So a really important part of the process is producing evidence-based guidelines. That means that the guideline team of experts looks at all the published medical academic papers and combines them into a short list of recommendations which are practical and aimed at general doctors to be able to diagnose and to treat these diseases. And so thank you to GAIN Charity for helping to fund these guidelines, which have been recently published and hopefully have raised awareness amongst doctors and neurologists about best practice. New things then. InkBase is a registry. So this is a form of collaborative research. And we're just getting started in the UK, but this is part of an international group. And essentially, we want to try and enroll individual patients who are suffering from CIDP. And we're going to gather data about individual people. And when we've got large numbers of patients in our database, then we can do research and look at the differences and the similarities and try and draw conclusions about why some people do better than others. So we hope that as many people as possible suffering from CIDP will consent to have their details entered into this database, and if so, speak to your neurologist. Then there's some new medical drug treatments on the horizon, which are looking exciting. And having had not many new treatments for years, actually, we somehow now seem to have several coming along at the same time. And I should say, though, that these treatments are work in progress. The things I'm about to mention have been studied in an initial phase randomized clinical trial. They are not yet published in a medical journal, they're not yet peer-reviewed, and they're not yet available on the NHS. But this is very promising work in progress, which is giving good initial results, and will need a bit more research, and it's going to be a few more years until it's actually available for real people, but it's exciting stuff. So the first one to mention is efgartigimod, which is it works a bit like plasma exchange, but actually you have it by a little injection once a week, I think. Technically, it's called an FcRn blocker. And this treatment really seems to work in CIDP. But what we're not quite sure is whether it is better or less good than some of the existing treatments. My personal view is it's probably not quite as good as IVIG, but it may well be a useful treatment for people who aren't doing so well on IVIG. And it certainly has an effect, and we need further work to see where it fits in with which patients are going to benefit from it. And then there's a new category of treatment called complement inhibitors. And I think that these are even more exciting. If I could have the next trial, please, the next slide. Complement is a part of the immune system. And in simple terms, what it does is when the immune system produces antibodies, then the complement is the mechanism of how the antibodies actually damage the cells. It's how the antibodies damage the nerves. And so if you have a drug that blocks complement, it's not getting rid of the antibodies, but it is preventing the antibodies from doing damage to the nerves. And actually, there's several different drugs that are targeting slightly different bits of complement, but there are 3 new ones which seem to have worked really well. Amy mentioned a few minutes ago in Guillain-Barré syndrome, how a complement blocking drug seems to have had a really good effect in helping GBS if patients have 1 dose of it right at the beginning of their GBS. But we don't quite know how much better or less good it is than IVIG, and we need more work into it, but it's looking really promising. So now this is CIDP, and this new drug, Rilipruvat, has been tested in CIDP. And if I could just see if my pointer is working, which is the pointer button.
Step.
There's no pointer. Okay, so this has been tested firstly in patients with CIDP who are already on IVIG or steroids, where they've had some benefit, they've already got a bit better from those drugs, but perhaps they're not as good as they'd like to be. Then what happened in the trial is they stopped those treatments, and then they immediately started the new treatment. And so if you look here at this bit, it shows that of those patients, half of them got a bit better. So they thought they were already improving with the IVIG or the steroids. They went on to the new treatment, and half of them got even better. Now, I should caution you that there was no placebo comparison group. So it may be that some of this is a placebo effect, that people think they're getting better just because they're getting a fancy new treatment, and we need to move on to placebo randomized control trials to be a bit more certain as to whether it works or not, but it's looking really promising. The second group of patients is this one in the middle. So they had tried IVIG or steroids, and they not got better, or only got a little bit better and not very well. So when they then moved on to this new treatment, half of them improved. So that's really promising, because it shows that patients who hadn't responded to our normal best treatments, half of them did get better. And then the third group here is patients who've not tried any treatment at all before, and 3/4 of them got better when they tried this new treatment. So it looks to me as if this new drug probably works better than IVIG or steroids, and probably works better than efgartigimod in the previous slide. And then when people stayed on it for a year, of the people who got better, most of them stayed better. So it continued to work. And the treatment, I think, is given as an injection once a week. It's a straightforward thing that people ought to be able to give themselves at home. There's one of the problems with CIDP is that some patients over a period of years develop secondary axonal degeneration. The muscles become thin and wasted, and there is permanent axonal damage to some of the nerve axons, which then means they're not going to respond to any immune treatments. And one of the promising things with this one is that when they measured something called neurofilament light in the blood, that got a lot better with this treatment, which probably suggests that this treatment is helping to prevent axonal degeneration as well. And incidentally, I think it's really important that we have more treatment in future, more research in future, looking at axonal degeneration in GBS too. And Amy mentioned that with calpain inhibitors, and there needs to be more research done into that. So next slide, please. So I'm now going to talk about a different disease, MMN. multifocal motor neuropathy, which is a bit like CIDP, but it's a different disease and even rarer. So currently, there is only one treatment for MMN, which is intravenous immunoglobulin. And if that doesn't work, then you're stuffed because there's nothing else that we know that works. Until this thing has come along. So empasiprubart is a different form of complement inhibitor. And I'm going to talk you through a trial that seems to show that that works quite promisingly. So in these patients were already on IVIG treatment, and they had to stop that and then immediately start either the new treatment or a placebo. Next slide, please. So this shows that patients who were on the new treatment mostly stayed good, but patients who were on placebo mostly got worse. And so this the gap between these two lines here shows that there is a big benefit from the new treatment. However, there were quite a few patients who got more better. So they'd already been on IVIG treatment, and they thought they were doing reasonably well with that. But when they started a new treatment, then quite a lot of them got even better in terms of the strength in their hands and disability measured on the disability scale. So that's very promising. And indeed, speaking to the chief investigator in the Netherlands who organized all this, he says that quite a lot of his patients said that this was the best they've been for years. Next slide, please. This, however, was quite a small trial. There were only about 30 patients in total having this. This promising initial result needs to be repeated, and there is going to be a larger clinical trial going to take place to test this more thoroughly before it can come to being clinically available. But it looks really promising. I mean, of course, one of the downsides of these new treatments is that they're going to be expensive, because it's really expensive to run these international clinical trials, and IVIG is expensive, and these new drugs are probably going to be even more expensive. But if they work well enough, then the NHS ought to fund them. Fingers crossed. Thank you.
Well, you've well and truly destroyed my time. But I'm probably going to interrupt, because there's a huge amount of information there. And I can see lots of people nodding away when their condition came up. And loads of us, loads of guys. We've got a very in-tune team. We are over, but we can put it back. It's fine. We're going to put it back. You've got time to go in. It's all good. Can we, if anyone's got a couple of quick questions, well, you've got these guys here. I mean, they're going to be around, so you can get them later. I mean, you know who they are now. You can literally go and grab them. Don't do that. You go and talk to them. But has anyone got a question? Slide stuff. I know. Slides. Are we allowed to share the slide? I see like raised eyebrows. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's okay. It's in public space. So some of the pictures from my trials were photographs I took of presentations and conferences. So yes, you can share the slides.
Yes, brilliant. Yes, we have. There we go. Anyone else got a question? No questions at the minute. Do remember that we've got a question and answer panel later. So if you do think of anything, you can hold it up there. Jane's going to join us for that, and the others will be in the room as well. So you can do that. So can I just say, we say a massive round of applause to the incredible name on the store of the talking. The next session is probably the most important one of the day. We're going to invite our friends from GBS CIDP Foundation International, who are going to come and share with us their thoughts of what they do and how we work together and everything else. I must say, before they come up, well, I'm saying to them later, but these guys are funded this today. we wouldn't be here without it. And I was of two minds whether we do a conference, whether we put everyone in. I'm busy. No, I've got loads of stuff to do. But these guys went, no, it's really important. You must get everyone together. And I went, I'm going to do it. And look what we've got today. This is amazing. And it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for these two guys. So thank you very much.
Hello, hello. We are so excited to be here. We can't quite keep up with Richard's enthusiasm, but we're going to try. We are really delighted that so many people showed up and are sharing their voices today. I'm Maureen Neville. I'm the Chief Marketing and Programs Officer from the U.S. Foundation. I'm joined by my colleague here, Nancy DeSalvo. She's our new International Affairs Director. And so we just wanted to say thank you to the GAIN team for putting this whole thing together. It's wonderful. You guys did a fantastic job. Thank you to Claire and thank you to Carol. It's been a pleasure to work with you on this. And so today we want to talk a little bit about how these two foundations actually met. So we're going to take a little walk down memory lane and then bring you current to some of the programs that are actually available worldwide for everyone that we're producing. And then maybe even talk a little bit about what we chatted with Rich about yesterday, which is some social research programs that we're going to be working on together. And we're going to fit this all in 10 minutes. So yeah, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Nancy here, and we'll take a little trip down memory lane, as I said, and go on a little bit more about our partnership.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. And we'll go on with the next slide. I think actually more than one, because the first one was our presentation, and you already know us. So the GBS CIDP Foundation International, it was founded in 1980, and then everybody has their Gladys. We have Estelle. She was the one who created this great foundation around a table in her dining room with just a few people. She needed to support people who came up with this terrible disease. In those years, there was no internet, we had no information, and she was lost when her husband, Bob, came down with GBS. And so today, we're looking at a grant foundation with 30,000 patients in our database worldwide. We have 20 members of our Global Medical Advisory Board, just as you can pitch into yours. We have ours, and we have 63 global centers of excellence. Those are hospitals that are located worldwide, a lot in the United States, but we have a few in the UK as well. King's College is one of them, Birmingham University, and many others around the entire globe. We have over 200 volunteers in 47 countries, and that is, to me, one of the most important parts, because the way the foundation works is peer-to-peer. We don't have people in Australia, we don't have people in India, but we have our volunteers, because the volunteers are previous patients. And I can tell you my experience, because I was a volunteer for 10 years. I was diagnosed with GBS in 1990. No Google there. I had no idea what was going on with me. And then I found the foundation, and I finally received some information, support, some care, somebody who really understood what I was going through. And after a few years, I decided to become a volunteer, and it worked out pretty good because then CIDP came along, so I got an upgrade. And it worked really well. And I decided that I was going to dedicate my life to help others, because I did not want that to happen to another person, to another Nancy located where I live in that case, because I'm from Palermo, Sicily. You might recognize my accent, but it's not. And being a volunteer really invigorated me. It gave me a purpose. GBS, CIDP happened for a reason. And being there to help a patient is something that I can't feel in anything else I do. Even if I've never been an ambitious person, but if I were to be, let's say, CEO of GAIN, it wouldn't be the same as being a volunteer and being able to talk to that patient and got that patient support, check up on the patient, make sure that she is doing fine. And well, it's been a ride, and it was wonderful to be a volunteer, but this year I became the International Affairs Director. But that's not how I present myself, because I am basically a patient. And that's what Estelle tells us. Estelle tells us to focus on the patient. Remember the story, remember the patient, because otherwise we have no goal beyond that. Today, the foundation has 18 employees and 13 members of our board of directors. And if we can go on to the next slide, this is how this connection all started. Because we were asking ourselves, what are we doing here? What is this? Why are we in London? Well, we are in London because long time ago, two beautiful ladies, I would say courageous and determined ladies. We have Estelle and Glennis that met to something terrible, to tragedy, but they turned a tragedy into an opportunity and something that today is here. And we can see this room that is full of, I see involvement, I see engagement, I see hope. And I think that there is also a lot of love in this room because we all understand each other. And they got it. They understood what was going on because Estelle had Bob that had GBS. Gladys was a GBS patient. And they went on and created this wonderful connection. And that's why we're here today, because we decided when Rich came on board that we wanted to reconnect and make sure that we are working together to reach out to as many patients as possible and unite and collaborate and create a great team. Next slide, please. We just wanted to take you through some pictures because there's really not much to say because all has been said through GAIN, and I think we are on the same path. But we just want to make sure that that does not end there. 30, 40, or 20 years ago. We want to move on, move forward, and just ride the tide and make sure that we work together. It was a pleasure last month in September. Months ago, we had a workshop, a volunteer workshop, because every now and then we go around the world and try to meet with our volunteers to make them feel engaged, important, because they are important. And Rich joined us, and it was great to have him there because we need to support one another and we need to make sure that we grow together, learn from one another, and just make sure that we are focused on what we need right there on those 3 pieces of paper. That's what we need. We need ideas, we need involvement, and we need to know what the patient needs. And with that, I stand in hands on to you.
So our mission has been tried and true for all these years, and it was created by these two ladies, Gladys and Estelle. Everything we do, every program that we create is based on, is patient-centric, and it is based on supporting, educating, providing research, and advocating for our patients. So we have, as Nancy said, we have 200 volunteers around the world that provide chapter meetings and one-on-one counsel. They also are now doing virtual meetings. We have free pamphlets, free webinars, lots of free educational information on the website. We brought a lot of free materials today, so please feel free to take some with you. Research. So we do have an infrastructure for our research grant program, where we've been able to provide over $8 million to research funding since 2006. But interestingly, our conversation yesterday led to social research, which is something we have not explored yet. So that just gives you an idea of a collaboration that we can really do together with GAIN. And Rich has got a great social research background, and so he's going to be very pivotal in helping us do that collaboration. And advocacy. So in the U.S., we bring our volunteers that are interested in advocacy to Capitol Hill, and we talk to the legislators about changing actually the laws that affect our patients. And what we're hoping is in the future that we can do that globally, that we can learn more about the advocacy landscape around the world and really get involved in some more advocacy initiatives, of course, with Nancy leading the helm there. So next slide, please. So current programs. So you are all invited to attend these programs. So I wanted to just make sure that you knew about them. These are global programs. They're accessible to anyone. We have monthly virtual coffee chats. So has anyone been to our coffee chats by chance? Just Rich. Okay, he's the only one. So we have coffee chats for men, for women. We have senior coffee chats. We have coffee chats for people who are new to the community. We have a new Veterans Coffee Chat that's coming up next week after Veterans Day. But it's really an opportunity to meet other people that are going through what you're going through. It's an opportunity to network. They're very casual. They're usually at 1 o'clock Eastern time, so that should potentially work for you.
Tea time.
Tea time, right? Exactly. So it'd be tea chat. So it would be tea chats, people, right? So, but please feel free to join. We have had people from London join us before, and all over the UK actually. So make sure you look at our events calendar. You sign up for it and you're sent the Zoom link. Webinars, we have free webinars every month. We have a speaker series where we have our global medical advisors that are talking about research and treatments. We've had psychologists talking about emotional health. We've recently had all about fatigue and managing pain. They are free and they're monthly and they're on demand. So you can sign up and get the link to them if you can't make them live. We have a doctor-to-doctor consult. This is the most underutilized service of the foundation, okay? But what it is if your doctor is having difficulty in either diagnosing or somehow helping you in your treatment plan, we can get him connected with one of our global medical advisors, and they'll have a phone call with each other, and they can advise them. So the global medical advisors, very much like yours, are the world-renowned doctors that are studying these conditions. So if your doctor is not as familiar, we can connect them and put them on the phone with each other. Okay, so yes, that is a wow. So please use that service. Centers of excellence worldwide that Nancy had mentioned, we have 63 centers around the world. We have 4 right here in the London area. Many of the doctors from the centers are here today. We have an international volunteer network, which I spoke of. And we also have a global patient-reported registry. Again, that's accessible to patients worldwide. And what we're doing, it's patient-reported. And what we're trying to do is just find out a little bit more about the complications of the journey of GBS, CIDP, and MMN. And then, of course, build programs and resources around what we find out through those surveys. So we do have a QR code in the, oh, not this one, the different one, but we have a QR code on the card in the back. If you're interested in joining the registry and participating, please grab one of those cards. Next one. And last but not least, we have our next symposium, which we like to call the largest support meeting for GBS, CIDP, and in the world. We have biennial symposiums, and the next one is in Denver, Colorado, from September 11th through the 13th. Please try to make it if you can. We would love to see you there. It's a fabulous time. Our global advisors come. Patients from all over the world are there. I think our last one in DC had over 500 people. And it's really just an amazing time. And it's, becoming part of this global family. So that's a QR code. If you are inclined to use the QR code, you can hold your phone up and find out more information there. If not, Nancy and I are here. We're live QR codes. So you can just ask us. So I think that's it. Anything else from you?
Just again, the volunteer, being that I take care of and I kind of coordinate all of our volunteers worldwide, we usually have this coffee chat. It depends. It's either coffee, tea, or for Italy, it's aperitif. We don't sell for coffee. But we usually, I just send out a Zoom link to all of our volunteers. And I actually talked to Sean earlier, if any volunteer would like to join. It's not a teaching session. It's just a moment in which we talk. We understand our situation. If something's not working in one area, how does it work in another area? It's very nice. And we just connect from one country to another. And it feels very, very good. It's just a moment of human contact. It's really good.
Thank you very much. We're here for any questions. Thanks.
How balanced are they? All that stuff. Can you just pop it back a slide?
Yes.
I mean, those options that are available here, look, loads of stuff. Take them up on it. Yeah, we'll share them as much as we can. But there are things on here that we don't do. There's things that we are going to do. We're going to steal them. We'll be doing some of these things. These guys are more than happy to share off their stuff with us. It's been brilliant. They're so supportive, really good friends of ours. For me, it's a really important partnership that we've got. We see the foundation as a sister organisation to us. So thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it. please go and have a look at those things. I'm going to move on to the next bit. Emotional health. Dr. Stephanie in. I'll let you introduce yourself. And she's going to keep the time. She's very energetic. No, she's going to keep the time. And this is really important, actually, for us as organisations. This is an area which we think is underdeveloped and something that we get fed back on a constant basis from people, how important but overlooked their emotional health is and the emotional health impact of these very, very traumatic conditions. So this is really, really important. So have a listen, get involved, share your ideas. But Stephanie, really tricky here.
If I stand here, you'll be visible on screen. Thank you. Hi everyone. So yes, I am Stephanie. I am a psychotherapist and psychologist and a senior clinical team member of Rare Minds. And I will share a bit about our organisation as we get into thinking about the emotional impact of living with a condition like GBS, CIDP, and the presentation is specifically for those impacted, considering that living with the condition is not just the patient, the person that has the condition themselves, but also loved ones, those involved in caring or part of the family. So just to share a bit about our organisation. So our founder has been working as a psychotherapist with those living with rare conditions since 2013. And we've seen over many years increasing evidence and assessment of need for psychological and emotional wellbeing support, but really a lack of provision. And this is something that is not just in the UK, but globally, as psychosocial needs in rare conditions often quite unmet, and that's reported by not just patients and loved ones, but healthcare professionals as well. And then as an organisation, we designed the first specialist post-qualification training in rare disease counselling, and we launched officially in October 2020. And as an organisation, we're founded in both professional and lived experience. So many of us in the team have lived with our own rare conditions or care for someone who does. And we're a clinical team of psychotherapists, psychologists, and counsellors. We deliver our services mainly online so that we can reach people, so that we're not kind of restricted geographically to where we can deliver our services. And to our knowledge, but always happy to hear if someone has heard otherwise, but to our knowledge, we are the first specialist mental health charity for the rare disease community. So I'll go through this fairly quickly, but it's just to explain a little bit about sort of how we work and the areas that we've developed in the last 4 years since launching. And we have been focusing quite a bit on service provision. So that is delivering sessions, individual and couples counselling, creating group programs, delivering workshops and creating self-help resources. And we always do this in partnership with patient organisations. So as an organisation, as a charity, Rare Minds, we do not deliver services directly. We always partner with patient organisations so that our services are always bespoke and tailored to the needs of the individual community. We also deliver training and support for healthcare professionals in order to kind of increase awareness and considering the sort of psychological impact of rare diseases in healthcare delivery, and also provide supervision and training for volunteers, rare organisation leaders, and frontline workers, again, always in partnership. And also research and awareness, so presenting at conferences, contributing to case studies, trying to build data to evidence also the work that we are doing. All this to try and inform policy and practice and trying to have mental health more embedded in healthcare delivery. So the way that we work really stems from our belief that there is no health without mental health, because it is very there is a lot of evidence to support that mental health and physical health are so closely linked. You know, as a whole person, you cannot separate how you feel physically to how you feel emotionally, because these impact each other. So there is lots of evidence to demonstrate that poor mental health might affect your ability to look after yourself, might affect your resilience, and also poor physical health can lead to higher rates of depression and anxiety. So this is well evidenced as a sort of general kind of phenomena. But when we think more specifically about rare conditions, then there's lots of different points for us to think about. So I know there's a lot on this slide. I will kind of go through each point, but actually I don't think that you will be surprised by the points that I'm highlighting here. This is probably very much your own lived experience, but I think sometimes seeing these things kind of named and written down can serve as a helpful reminder. So we know that one of the key things that affects mental health when living or impacting by a rare condition is the journey to diagnosis. And you may have sometimes heard that referred to as the diagnostic odyssey, because some people can sometimes spend months and years trying to get a diagnosis. Sometimes not only is that a lengthy experience, but it can also be a traumatic one, where you might have had multiple visits to A&E, interacted with multiple healthcare professionals that may have said to you, no, you're absolutely fine, maybe even implied that this is all in your head. And that can be really damaging for psychological well-being, because it can also affect our ability to trust the healthcare professionals when we've experienced being dismissed and disbelieved. So that's quite a vital aspect that affects mental well-being. As you probably know, without me having to remind you, that also, and I think this is one of the themes of our sessions so far today, is that there is often low disease awareness for rare conditions. And that's not just among the public, so when you're trying to describe your condition to friends and family, but also among healthcare professionals themselves. So trying to interact with your GP or other healthcare professionals involved in your care who may have never heard of GBS, CIDP, and in your space, you may find yourself being the expert in the room, which kind of shifts the dynamics quite significantly when you're turning to a healthcare professional and expecting them to sort of have the answers. So we know that can often lead to experiences of feeling frustrated, but can also be quite isolating when you're trying to sort of connect with peers who have never heard of your condition. Linked to that, I would also highlight that living with a rare condition can highlight feelings of difference, which can lead to a sense of isolation. And I think that's why we often see when we have events like today, where patients can come together. It's often well attended, because this might be the only space and opportunity that you have to connect with other patients such as yourself. The living with a rare condition also means having to manage complex physical and emotional symptoms interacting. So that is increasingly prevalent in conditions that might affect things like hormones, which have a very direct link with the mood, but also just in general, as we know, having serious physical symptoms can affect our mental well-being. So there's a very direct kind of link with the symptoms interacting. So I'm just going to have a quick drink. So when we think also about living with rare conditions, we have to consider that there are also lots of uncertainties that we have to contend with. And we like to describe that as macro and micro uncertainties. And macro uncertainties are those bigger uncertainties, for example, thoughts and concerns about how your condition will progress. And then micro uncertainties are things like worrying whether the clinic tomorrow will be running on time, whether you need to organise some help with sort of school pickup or grocery deliveries, lots of these kind of day-to-day uncertainties. But all of these different layers of uncertainty contribute to feelings of anxiety, because anxiety is our brain's way of trying to make sense or trying to make predictable what we don't know. as you probably know, without me having to repeat, as I said, I think sometimes it's helpful to kind of see it written down as well, is that having a rare condition can carry with it quite a high logistical and financial burden. So that would be the financial burden of having to attend lots of appointments in different locations, having to travel quite far. But it might also look like having to purchase specialist equipment for your home or your workplace. And as we know, although there are social services and things in place, those don't always cover all of the logistical and financial burdens that you might encounter. I think one of the sort of also direct impacts of living with a rare condition is actually the emotional experience of going through treatment, and even having to monitor symptoms, and those actually are sometimes reported as quite traumatic. And I think that's certainly something that I know from conversations of speaking with patients, that experiences of staying in hospital and so on can be very directly quite traumatic, and often are rarely addressed or spoken about. We know that living with a rare condition or caring for someone who does can also place quite a great strain on the family and couple relationships, because it might affect the dynamic or sort of how, as a family, you might communicate. You may have different ways of wanting to talk about your condition. Perhaps you might feel that you would like to be very open about it. Your spouse may prefer to be quite private. And so that those kind of different ways of processing and wanting to share information will sometimes place strain on the couple and the family. There is also the visible and invisible aspect of rare conditions, which mean that sometimes having a visible condition means that you can't sort of, you can't hide. People may very openly ask you, what's wrong? Why are you walking funny? And then being pushed in a situation where you might have to disclose. So having to negotiate that visible side, but also what it's like if your condition is invisible and your workplace, for example, are not supportive because they can't see and therefore aren't sure what sort of support you might need or whether you do actually need additional support. So the visible and invisible aspect of living with a rare condition can also be quite tricky to manage. And then we also knew that the impact of genetic conditions and inherited conditions can affect our sense of identity and also our decision-making in choosing, for example, to have a family. And that might bring up feelings of grief and loss. So again, as I said, I'm sure that I've probably not said anything that you don't already know yourself. But I think sometimes when we recognize that all of this actually comes together, it can be quite a stark realization how much living with a rare condition can affect our emotional well-being. Okay. So this is just a collection of words at the moment that represents the kind of feelings that you might recognize living with a rare condition or supporting someone who does. And as you can see, if you have a quick look through the slide, that some of these words might be deemed more negative or negative emotions, negative feelings, or others perhaps more positive, for example, resilient or hope. But as you can see, there is a real sort of multitude of feelings that come up with living with a rare condition. And I just want to give you a moment to look through and just really think about, are there sort of certain words that stand out for you, certain feelings that really resonate with your experience? Is there maybe a word or two that actually you would want to add that you feel isn't represented up there, that would capture some of the feelings that you've had over time living on your condition? Okay. So having multiple and sometimes even contrasting or paradoxical feelings is part of human experience, right? We always have both positive and negatives. Through day-to-day, life has lots of ups and downs. So putting these feelings up is not necessarily saying that there's anything we need to do about this, but it can just be helpful to name and acknowledge some of our experience and how this might resonate. Oh, excuse me. Oh, I'll do. Indeed. So what can help when we might be experiencing feelings that might feel a bit more difficult? So feelings that might kind of feel harder to sit with. So for example, anger, resentment, frustration. Well, as I said, there's not necessarily anything that needs to be done about these feelings because these feelings are natural. They are part of the human experience. They are part of the challenge of living with a rare condition. But there are ways that we can learn to accept these feelings so that we don't continue to struggle with them. And if you can see the sort of image on the right-hand side is showing the difference between when we try and fight these feelings, when we try and struggle with them, which is that they might amplify and they might feel out of control, versus when we find a way to sort of name, acknowledge, and allow the feeling to pass. So the way that we do that, as I say, is to start with noticing how we feel and trying to name it. Sort of noticing, okay, I'm noticing that I'm feeling quite anxious right now, or I'm feeling angry. Okay, being able to name that already puts a slight distance between ourselves and the feeling in that we are able to observe it rather than being wrapped up in it. And then, and this is a very important step, particularly when we're feeling feelings that might be deemed sort of more difficult, like resentment or unfairness, is do not judge the feeling and do not judge yourself for having it. And I think this is really important. So that's the next step, not judging the feeling, not judging myself. And then it might be helpful to think about what might help me in this moment. Do I need to talk to someone, perhaps a trusted friend or a partner, a family member? Or actually, do I want to do some movement, whether that's a walk or just some gentle movements at home? Or perhaps might I want to engage in something a bit more creative, thinking about sort of gentle distractions that sort of work for you. And then learn to allow that feeling to pass and reduce. And I think this is another key thing, which is to remember that actually all feelings ebb and flow, even good ones. So by allowing yourself to sit with that feeling also allows it to pass. And then you might reflect back and notice what is it that actually helped or who helped in what moment when I felt those certain feelings. So recognizing, are there specific people in your lives that can be really helpful and supportive when you need to talk to someone. So I know that I pointed out with some of the key themes as to why living with a rare condition is particularly challenging on mental health. But I just want to offer this metaphor, I'm both confused with metaphor and analogy, an image, so to speak, of what might be helpful in terms of picturing why managing a rare condition can feel so stressful at times, why at times we might actually be feeling quite overwhelmed. And that is the stress bucket. And I don't know if some of you are familiar with this, you might have come across it. But it's basically represents a sort of internal container that we all have that represents our capacity to manage stress and things that worry us. So we all have a stress bucket and it has a fixed size. Unfortunately, it cannot get any bigger or smaller. It is just a container. But in the bucket, everything gets moved in more. The stress from ongoing demands of day-to-day life, whether that's trying to get to work on time, whether that's sorting kids out, whatever that looks like for you, but also bigger life events, bigger things like a COVID pandemic, other sort of bigger issues that add to our stress. So all of these things are contributing and taking up space in your stress bucket. And now you need to think about adding in everything that comes with managing
GBS, or CIDP. And remember, the bucket is the same. So you're adding all of the stress that comes with managing the impact of the rare condition. So the different layers of uncertainty that I mentioned, the kind of bigger worries around how the condition will progress, what it will look like in a week, a month, a year, the kind of smaller day-to-day uncertainties, managing symptoms and side effects, coping with those difficult thoughts and feelings that we named, and also negotiating relationships, whether that's with friends and family or healthcare professionals, and even fears about the future. So this is also going in that same bucket. And what that means, because it's the same container, and it's a dynamic relationship, so your rare condition stress and your life stress combine in the same bucket, and they each take up different amounts of room. But what it means is that when something is going on with your rare condition, for example, when your symptoms are feeling very difficult to manage, or when you have lots of medical appointments, or you're waiting to hear back from results because your stress level is getting higher, your rare condition stress is taking up much more room in that bucket, which means that all of the life stresses that are trying to get in, there's a place for them to go. And when that happens, your bucket overflows. And how that might be experienced, because this is, as I said, an image, but how that might be experienced for yourself is that feeling of overwhelm, of I can't deal with one more thing going wrong. I can't take another appointment being changed. I don't want someone to ask something of me. It just feels like too much. And that's your stress bucket overflowing. And that's when you might recognize some of these stress signs. So when your stress levels are getting higher and higher because of rare condition stress, life stress, it affects how you behave, how you think and feel, and also your body shows you. So these are just some examples of how stress might show up. And remember that we're all individuals. We all deal with stress in different ways. So for some of us, it might look like becoming quite irritable. Others might actually shut down and withdraw from engaging with friends and family. Some might become very tearful, or you might notice that it affects your sleep. But actually learning to recognize your own stress signs can be really helpful in terms of managing your emotional well-being. Because once you've identified your stress looks for you, how you start to behave when you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed, how you start to think, or how your body starts to show you, then ideally you can start to think about putting in some tools and resources that might help you along the way before you reach to that level of feeling so overwhelmed. So here are just some key things, and I appreciate and I'm so grateful, Rich, that you provided me a big time slot, but actually in some ways I feel that emotional health is so difficult to cover in half an hour because there is so much to it. But I'm trying to sort of give some sort of clips notes version. And of course, I'm very happy, I'm around all day, very happy to have chats with people. I'm also happy to answer questions later. But just thinking about how can we look after ourselves emotionally? And I think the key thing is to remember that emotional health and looking after our emotional health also takes physical energy. So this is how, as I said before, how it can show up in feeling either more fatigued, really struggling to cope with the physical aspect, is because emotional work takes physical energy. So recognizing that hopefully means that you can be a bit more compassionate towards yourself if you're finding this hard. It's understandable. Try to accept your feelings, not fight them. So going back to the slide about not struggling with those difficult feelings, allowing them to pass, finding ways to manage. Learning to recognize your own stress signs, as I've just said, thinking about how does stress show up for you and what might feel helpful. Learning some relaxation and mindfulness techniques. Now, every time I say that, there's always one or two people in the room that go, oh, because I think those have become kind of key words. Do some meditation, do some mindfulness, and that doesn't resonate for everyone. But remember that relaxation can be a 30-second deep breathing exercise. It doesn't have to be a big 30-minute meditation.
It can really just be about noticing, okay, I'm getting anxious. I need to take a couple of deep breaths. That's a relaxation exercise. And also mindfulness, again, does not have to be a meditation. Of course, if that's something that you enjoy, please do it. But if you're someone who feels like that's not really my bag, that's fine. Actually, mindfulness really is just about being in the present. So you can do anything mindfully. Some of my clients talk about actually being in nature and going on very gentle walks feels really helpful. So how can you do that mindfully? How can you be really in the moment, focusing on how clean the leaves look or what the ground feels like under your feet? It's really just about being in the present moment, and that can feel grounding and can help manage feelings of anxiety. And I will also share some resources of ideas of exercises that you can do for relaxation and mindfulness. Allow yourself to seek comfort and support from others. And I know that that can sometimes feel difficult because sometimes our friends and family don't really know how to support us, but it can also be helpful to identify who in your social support network is good for what. So do you have a friend, for example, that has a great sense of humour and that's always up for a laugh? If you know that you have a friend in that network, that's not the person you're going to go to if you want to have a cry, right? Because they're not going to respond sensitively to your situation. But if you want to be distracted and you want to have fun, that's who you might call. So it's really identifying who in your network is able to provide what, so that you ask the right things of the right people. You might have a friend that's great at showing up for you practically, like offering to pick up groceries for you, to go do the food shop for you. So ask that of them and not ask for that kind of emotional support. So knowing who's good for what. On the topic of relationships as well, I think building relationships with your healthcare professionals is also a key aspect of living with a rare condition, particularly one that requires lifetime support. And when we think about building relationships with healthcare professionals, we think of that as something that has to build over time. It's about building trust. It's about opening communication so you can think clearly on both sides about what you need for your well-being. And as I said before, part of our work is also trying to encourage healthcare professionals to think about and be mindful of emotional well-being in addition to just addressing kind of your physical symptoms. And that might just be when you have a hospital appointment, how are you doing? How are you feeling in yourself? And sometimes even just being able to have that brief conversation, that in itself can feel like emotional support. That might be enough. And lastly, using social media and support networks wisely. Now, I think it's incredible that organizations like GAIN and GBS Foundation have coffee chats, and there are like online forums where you can interact with other patients. But also it's important to check in with yourself. What is this? How is this making you feel? Because actually sometimes engaging too much with other patients' stories, hearing about how other people may have some traumatic experiences in hospital can actually increase your own anxiety. So if you're noticing that in yourself, it's okay to also take a step back. So really think about how this is affecting you. And remember that everyone tends to their own mental health and well-being individually. So noticing what works for you. So I think I'm hopeful that I'm okay on time. I should actually check what time we're in. Oh, brilliant. Perfect timing. Okay, great. So key takeaways are that living with the impact of a rare condition is psychologically and emotionally challenging. I probably don't need to tell you that, but sometimes it's good to be reminded that this is acknowledged. We do know that this is an important need in the community, and there are organisations like Red Minds, but even GAIN and GBS Foundation that hold this in mind. But remember this for yourself when you're thinking, why am I finding this so hard? Why do I feel overwhelmed? Because it is challenging. So be kind to yourself. You know, that's the last bit, really. But you know, managing the psychological aspect of living with a rare condition is emotional work. Be kind to yourself. And also think that looking after your mental health is an integral part of looking after yourself. because as I said, there's such a strong link between physical and mental health. It might be that your physical health in terms of symptom management is at the best that it can be. You are at an optimal level, but actually you might be struggling. Your resilience levels might feel low. So thinking about your mental health is such a key part in thinking about your overall health. So just to share a few resources. So Rare Minds, we've created a wellbeing hub, and that's a fancy little QR code if you want to have a look at it. But you can also Google Rare Minds Wellbeing Hub, and I've got some little cards to hand out as well. But the Wellbeing Hub just contains more information on kind of signposting and thinking about different tools and resources for managing your emotional well-being. Some of those exercises I mentioned on breathing exercises, relaxation. So hopefully that will be a helpful tool. And it's a growing hub. So at the moment it's actually, I think it covers quite a lot of topics, but there's always more that we can add, and that's certainly what we're aiming for. We also have a podcast that you can listen to on Spotify. And the host is our CEO and founder, who speaks with guests on different topics about living with a rare condition. So that might be sort of thinking about the impact on the couple and so on. So I'm going to share with you some general mental health organisations. So for example, you can access support from NHS talking therapies if you go to the website Every Mind Matters. You can also go to the Hub of Hope website and put in your postcode, and it will produce a list of all of the local services that might be able to offer some psychological support. There are also charities like Anxiety UK, which have amazing, phenomenal resources for thinking about anxiety specifically. Of course, all of these are general organisations. They don't necessarily name or acknowledge the unique aspects of living with a rare condition, but hopefully some of the resources are still relevant and can still be helpful. If you are feeling highly distressed and what we might think about as a sort of crisis point, please remember that you are not alone. So there are 24-hour helplines, there are services that are available to you if you're highly distressed. So please do not hesitate to contact Samaritans. They are a listening service. Also, you can contact your GP, although I know at the moment when I say that, everyone kind of goes, yeah, good luck. But that is one of your port of calls, NHS 191. But also remember that if you are highly distressed, if you are having some very difficult or disturbing thoughts, and you do not feel that you have support, you can also present Amy. So please remember to keep yourself safe and remember that you're not alone. And then I think this is one of my last few slides, just some more helpful resources. So for example, the Oxford University had created a lovely leaflet on managing fatigue. And for those of you that have not heard of the spoon theory, please look it up. It's a really great way to think about kind of energy management and to think about well, I'm not going to go into loads of detail because you don't have time, but please look up the spoon theory. It can be really helpful in terms of thinking how we allocate our energy and why sometimes things like just taking a shower feels like it just is impossible. And then a couple of helpful books as well on sort of living well with a long-term health condition. And then perhaps Headspace and Calm and Butterfly you may have already heard of, again, provide some really helpful exercises for relaxation. And that's me. Was that time? Yeah. Yeah.
So we've balanced physical health and emotional health for half an hour each. That's a good result. There was 4 of them. There's only 1 of you. Well done. Yeah, I mean that's incredible. I don't know how everyone feels about that. I was watching. There's loads and loads of nodding. Phones are up, taking pictures. This is really, really effective stuff. And I think that the bucket, the stress bucket, who can't relate to that and it overflowing and what that feels like when that goes over. So I think there's so much. I mean, I could spend another hour talking about this now. I won't. But what I will ask is for a quick show of hands. Do we feel this is an important subject that we should be doing something about? What? Boom.
No, wow.
I mean, wow. That's a lot. I think that was everyone. And on the screen as well. Brilliant. I mean, this is so important. And I think my big takeaway just from this section is that I'll be going away to talk with the board about how we take this forward, which I think is pretty brilliant. So thank you so much. Has anyone got any questions? Sorry for a second. Anyone got any questions? She's going to join the panel at the end, but anything now?
And also feel free to come find me if you're prepared to have them private.
Super.
Paul has raised his hand. I don't know if it's an opportunity
Yes,
to take that question.
Can we bring Paul in, please?
Paul, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was just raising my hand to say thanks very much. Those boxes you had on your screen there, I could tick every single one as the emotions that I went through and still do from time to time. And I just want to thank you. That was a really good speaking and talk. As been all the guests. I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave you fairly soon. But what a great day. Thank you so much for your time and especially that one. That was brilliant. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you, Paul. We really appreciate that. Thank you. One of the themes for today is this community, our community. I think it's really, really important that we actually hear from some people, people impacted by these conditions. Whilst they're coming up, I just want to throw in a couple of initial thoughts from me. I'm new into this. I only came in January. I've got no experience of GBS or CIDP, MMN, or any of these other conditions. And I know lots of services. I know lots of cohorts of people, groups of people, and I have never, and I'm not saying this as I'm standing at the front here, I have never come across such an amazing supportive community as I've found within the GBS and CIDP community. And the fact that from word go, people were welcoming me in and supporting, and there's lots of people within this room who I include on that. From the day-to-day stuff that comes on the Facebook group, and the people who contribute to that on a constant basis, who are, again, coming today, it amazes me. The comments that me and Claire get when we're speaking to people and how welcome they've been of us two coming in, it's incredible. But it's how everyone comes together to support, and Glenn is one who's pulled this together and made it happen. But this is impacting everyone, every single person. You don't have people coming in and going out. People come in, they're so impacted by these conditions, they want to support other people. The board, are people who've been impacted by this condition giving up their time. Our volunteers, exactly the same. It's incredible. So from me, wow, what an amazing community. But the fact that, you all come together today, you all support each other, people fundraising, giving, time, money, resources, everything is absolutely incredible. And I've not seen anything like it. I'm a 50-year-old man who's been through the NHS, social care and the community sector, and I have never seen anything like this. And well done, Margaret Bobby. Right, can I come to you first? So Claire Claire's amazing. And when I talk about people who come in and support, I remember I missed the first GBS group that I couldn't go to, and I turned up at the CIDP group, and I was really worried because I'm coming into this group and I don't know anything about these conditions particularly. And Claire was on there, and Claire has been so supportive and so amazing, and she doesn't know this, but we rely on her. We rely on her at those meetings. We rely on her a lot of things. She's done an amazing thing during awareness month, which I sprang on her and said, "Hey, do you mind talking to me for a while?" We recorded it and put it out, and it's well watched by everybody. So it was really important for me that Claire comes and talks today and shares her thoughts on the community. So thank you.
No pressure.
No, it's not.
Which is I don't think I've ever used the microphone before. Wow. Okay. I'm old school. Make the notes. When Rich asked me whether I wanted to say a few words today about the GBS and CIDP community, it made me wonder precisely how long I've been a member of this club that no longer really wants to be a member of. And it happens that this week, on the 29th of October, it was the 5th anniversary of my CIDP diagnosis. And I remembered that I'd been in hospital for 10 days undergoing tests, and my consultant came to my bedside with another neurologist from the team and a specialist nurse. And he delivered this diagnosis that became more obscure with every word. Chronic. Yeah, got that. Inflammatory. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It was demyelinating. And level biology could win. You know, a polyradicular neuropathy. Immobile. No. They stayed, they explained the treatments, the prognosis, maybe 15 minutes, and then I was left on my own to process the news. Helpfully, Facebook tells me that the date I joined the game group on Facebook was also the 29th of October. So literally on the same day as my diagnosis, I sought out community. I remember feeling relieved that I had a diagnosis, but baffled by what it meant for me. I was effectively paralysed at that point, from the waist down, and in my arms, my hands, and face. And I needed to know things like, is this not CIDP? Do people recover? Might I be able to walk again? If so, how long might that take? Now, these were all questions I could and did ask my neurologist. But there's something about hearing from others who have the same illness, the same symptoms, and something at the same experience that is so valuable. I distinctly remember scouring the videos that people had uploaded to the group of being able to walk out of rehab and watching them repeatedly, motivating myself. Having these life-changing and often disabling chronic illnesses can be isolating. Not only because perhaps we can't do the things we used to, but also because sometimes people around us don't understand them and how they affect us. There are invisible symptoms that we can only try to describe. Some of us have neuropathic pain, others brain fog, others may experience debilitating fatigue. Our community understands those symptoms in a way that our family and friends may not. And this can help us feel understood and heard and can give us a sense of validation. We can use the community to seek and to offer emotional support. This community has helped me on my bleak days and celebrated every small victory with me. And it's been my pleasure to be able to extend the same to others. We share in other ways too. We offer practical advice and resources about the various treatments, and we manage our side effects, and describing coping strategies that may have worked for us. I believe community requires participation to function at its best. We all have different levels at which we're able to do this. I can't run 10K to raise funds yet, but I do participate in other ways. I join in webinars to expand my knowledge and understanding of my condition. I participate in online discussion groups. I share my experiences and the knowledge I've acquired with anyone who asks, especially when they're newly diagnosed. I use social media to raise awareness of these conditions and the charities and organisations that support those who have them. By using hashtag on social media, I've connected with people with CIDP globally. We share our experiences, both good and bad. These are all ways for me to be involved and to help to sustain and grow my community. For me, this community has been such a supportive and empowering space in the last 5 years, and I'm so grateful for having this amazing resource. I just want to finish quickly by saying that it's just so incredible for me to finally be in a room with people from my community, between lockdown, COVID, being online. I just literally have never met other people with CIDP or GBS, like face to face. So I'm getting a bit emotional. I just want to extend my own personal thanks to our hosts and to everybody, Neuropathies, you and Chris, to say thank you to for making today possible.
Crikey, well, hard to follow that one. Good luck. And then I've been chopping onions at the back to get over. I think I've got some slides. You don't mind?
Yes, sorry.
So again, it saves if you then make these slides instead. Yeah, so I'm John. I've got CIDP. I'm also a volunteer, but now I'm also a zebra, apparently, which I think that's a lot cooler to have. Just a really quick backstory, and not a lot of pictures of me in hospital, so don't worry. But I was diagnosed with GBS back 3 years ago, December 2021. I thought personally that was me done. I recovered really quickly, 10 days. No, I was paralysed from the neck down, but after IVIG, I walked out of hospital, and within 10 days, made a pretty good recovery. I'll be honest, I didn't think I needed support. I didn't reach out again. I didn't go online because I thought I was okay. And fast forward to January this year, I was back in hospital, and clearly it wasn't GBS. So a huge shock for me. And then that's where you need the support, right? Give me a second. I was only just the 6 days again, so I made a good recovery. I was back at work within a couple of months. I do run 10Ks. I do walk the dog. I feel lucky. I call myself the lucky one. But I did a decent recovery. But I wanted some more. I wanted some guidance. I wanted some support. I wanted to feel part of this community. I think Rich calls it a tribe. I feel that I can identify and get on and relate to everyone in this room in various ways. And I didn't want just to rely on Dr. Google either. There's so much stuff out there. There's so much stuff that we can get. Nancy, Maureen, Rich, Claire, especially Claire's fantastic. They're providing this support for us, whether it is online or over the phone. There's lots of networks, lots of webinars we can get involved in. And I feel really fortunate that I've got a bit of time, a bit of energy, a bit of space mentally and physically to be able to help others, whether that's fundraising, beauty awareness or volunteering. I am denied about joining the Facebook group or joining the Facebook page of CIDP and GBS. I joined it, did a bit more research and more reading around it. And I spotted these Zoom calls once a month that getting set up. Didn't know what I'd get for it, didn't know why I needed it, but I joined it. And within the first 5 minutes, I asked the question, does everyone else's hand feel really cold and pins needling? And the smiles and the nods, you immediately feel part of it. Claire was on the call, I think Faith, I'm not sure if Faith or Leo on the call, and I've got to know Howard, and to know Howard's on the call since. So there is that support network. Stephanie, you mentioned that support network, and that really needed. You feel part of something. People understand what you're going through, the various different symptoms. So I wanted to, with a bit of space mentally and physically, give something back. And all that support that we've got is amazing. The online support, the Facebook groups, the peer support, the opportunity to hear from others, to read about stuff, to get involved in is really good. But me and Gladys just had a chat over lunch, and there's something special. Well, there's something special about today. There's something special about seeing people. There's something special about those conversations over coffee, bumping into each other over the salad bar. In here, there's something really powerful about that face-to-face personal interaction. I think you get a lot more for it. A lot more from it. I've got background in volunteering, setting up volunteer groups. And I know that from previous experience, that local identity, that local tribe, again, is so important. It's so important to have. And if it helps one person, brilliant. If it helps more, even better. So on one of the Facebook pages, there was a discussion around, I can't remember exactly what the topic was, but I think about treatment. 2 or 3 people mentioned, oh, I'm in Leeds. Well, I'm in Leeds. Oh, so there's 4 of us then are in Leeds. Why don't we meet for coffee? And that was all it was. There was no agenda, no rules, but there's an immediate bond, whether it is because we're all from Leeds, whether we all went to the same hospital, whether we all met the same neurologist, but there was a bond there already, a bit of commonality. So the idea of this local get-together started. You know, if it can happen once, that's great. If it happens once and people get together and get what they need from a one-to-one interaction or a group interaction, that's great. If it happens more than once, even better. Do you follow? So this year, I've tested it, I guess. Tested the idea of these local get-togethers. Why Yorkshire? Well, I'm not a Yorkshireman, but I live in Yorkshire. So it's local to me. It's easy for me to organise these events. Just to test the idea, is there an appetite of patients or putting people and patients together? People are patients that want to get together and have a chat. Like I say, no agenda. Talk about an hour of everyone's time, and it was just really nice just to kind of spend a bit of time. But going, yeah, so your hand hurts, or yeah, my hand hurts, so what about it? What about that? What treatment have you got? What exercises you do? And it's just that idea of getting together. That's the aim for me. I want to be what Rosie's doing in the Northwest. I want to get bigger and better degrees, but she's doing fantastic. So if we can do that across the UK, brilliant. And the feedback I guess from the Leeds one and from the York one's been great. People want to meet again, and it doesn't need me to do this. It doesn't need me to coordinate all this. So it can happen anywhere. All you need is one street ahead of it. All you need is somewhere to meet. So we've done it a couple of times. We've done it in Leeds and New York. I would love to do it in all areas. It's great that like Claire or Rich said there's 60 more people interested. There's about 60 more locations that we can get people together and have that one-to-one or that group discussion. Fantastic. I wrote down the toolkit. I was obviously I wrote this presentation while I was still at work. We're not having a toolkit. It's some ideas. It's some do's and don'ts which already exist on the game website. But it's about best practice, what to do, what not to do. But it's up to you. In the previous slide, I mentioned RSPB reserve one time, we met in a hotel the next time. It doesn't matter where it is, as long as it's accessible and people know where to go and what time to meet. That's all it takes for these get-togethers. So I'd love more to be set up. I'd love 16 more to be set up, and that's the dream. Even if 2 people meet and have a coffee and have a chat for half an hour, I think that connection is amazing. So, get in touch with me if you want to get involved in some local get-togethers. Get in touch with Claire or Rich. We can get something sorted. Because the hope is I'll be back next year and I'll be talking about at least another 15, 16 more local get-togethers. So yeah, thank you. Flipping heck, you two, I was crying. I literally did a cry over there. And John, fantastic, absolutely spot on. The passion that John has for supporting the community and making this happen is incredible. It's wonderful to hear people's voices and what this all means directly to people. I can sit here and like the record one page debit. These guys aren't. And it means an awful lot more coming from you. So thank you so much. Can we give them another round of applause? And the next slide. I'm going to move this on, and you guys can sit there for a second, and then I'll let you go. We've got you to have a break. We're moving around a little bit. It was a working break anyway, so forget that. Superb. Right. This is your opportunity to ask our panel a number of questions. What I do have to say, because he asked me to point it out, is that Richard is retired now and is no longer a registered medical practitioner. Is that all right? Really, I've done my bit. Right. Who's got a question, panel?
Hi everyone, my name's Marco at GBS and January this year. I just want to say thank you to the Medical Advisory Board. It was really interesting learning about all of the research that's going on with GBS. It's really nice to see the link between the present consultants and Professor Hughes. I just wanted to know, has anyone taken up the mantle after Professor Hughes to support further PhDs for other neurologists who want to do PhDs as well?
Who's going to come on to that one?
Yeah.
Who's following behind you, Richard?
I'm delighted to say that a lot of people following on behind, and they're on the medical advisory board, so you don't need to look any further than that. So Dr. Haddon on my right, and Professor Rinaldi, who's not here, particularly in the Oxford, but he's also very much involved in research. So I don't think you need to worry. There are people out there, and I'm sure they would be all too delighted if you were to set up a competition for research fund, granting in did all sorts of application research. Have a go.
Thank you. Brilliant. That's what we will be doing. I'm sure. Anyone else? Anyone online got a question? Any questions come through?
Not at the moment.
Not a minute. Anyone else in the room? With right at the back. Hang on. Come to you. That's all right. Yeah.
Fascinating. Can I ask about Ireland?
No, I can't get you. What the Irish question, that's a very, very, very good question. So, GAIN do cover the UK and Ireland, allegedly. I think we've got a significant issue around how we work with Ireland, how we're registered to support our reach in, and I think it's something that we haven't done. We may have done in the past, but we certainly aren't doing it in a minute. I think it's fair to say, Claire, that we get very little in terms of support. I can see Glenys' point. I will take this over to you in a second, Glenys. But I do know that Glenys has been over because I get people saying, "Oh, I remember when Glenys came." That was a very long time ago, wasn't it? So what do we do in terms of it? I think we need to do a lot more. I have got a paper to take to the board that has been on my to-do list for a good while that is around that exact issue. It hasn't been written yet, so you're actually right to bring it up. But Glenys.
We were originally known as the GBS support group of the UK and Ireland. Unfortunately, Brexit cancelled that, and it was working against the rules and regulations of being in Europe and being in Brexit. So unfortunately, there was a failure not in my time, but it did disintegrate, unfortunately. We used to have difficulty. Then I've been over several times to Dublin doing meetings, and people will us. One person actually did take 5 buses to get to Dublin to come to a meeting, so it was active, but I think it probably needs addressing again.
Thank you. I mean, I think also it's all about our reach and stuff. We're very, very England focused, probably because that's where we're based. We need to do more reaching others. Anna, I'm interested to know, have you got anything you want to add to that, or to bring up in a specific issue or point? Let me bring that. Sorry, I'm asking from the other side of the room about it passing you that. Sorry.
I've got a conflict of interest when it comes to Ireland, but what I would say is if you're talking about sustainability, and Ireland is a population of 5 million, and we're trying to grow our reach. That's an obvious place to look at.
I couldn't agree more. There's a lot more we can do in terms of reach. I mean, there's questions about Gibraltar as well. That's another one. But hey,
Yeah, Norman from North Manchester. This is a question really for Dr. Hannibal and for any consultant. And that is, when do you, as a doctor, give a diagnosis of CIDP or Guillain-Barré or anything of that nature to a patient or to the patient's relative, if the patient is really ill and can't speak? Can you or do you always, this is not getting at you personally, can you as a doctor always say, oh, by the way, there is a support group called GAIN? Because we've talked so much today about awareness. That would help awareness, I'm sure, if every patient or relative knew that there was someone they could talk to, they could email, they could phone, they could whatever. So what do you think about that? Is that something that in your experience you think most doctors do in all ICUs in the country? I'm not giving you personally. I'm saying, and if not, would it be possible for someone like yourself, excuse me, then to write to every, because there's only, 300 or 400 neurologists in the country, to write and just suggest that? And it's just a thought.
what sorry, we did discuss this earlier, weirdly, didn't we?
I personally do try and mention GAIN charity when I see a patient, but I'm sure that there are lots of other neurologists who don't. But actually, there are hundreds of different charities for all the different diseases. And so, virtually any time that I'm seeing a patient with any disease, I could say, well, did you know there is a charity for your specific disease? And yes, I agree that we should all have the awareness, all medical professionals, to signpost people to the appropriate charity.
I think that's what's one.
If I may, I have two answers actually. The first one to Ireland, since Brexit and we kicked it out of the UK, they can refer to us as international and we will connect them back to GAIN. We'll try to reunite that as well. So I'm available if anybody needs to talk to an international patient organization. And like we said earlier, everything will be teamwork towards the patient community. Regarding the connections of neurologists that refer to the patient organization, we actually had a campaign that is still ongoing, that is Be the Bridge. We contact medical professionals, we try to give them this card, this postcard, anything that they could maybe willingly give to the patient, to the family, so that they can connect that person to a patient organization, which in this case was us, but maybe that could be a future campaign for GAIN as well. And recently I have been just on my phone and on the emails connecting with all of our centers of excellence. And my next step is going to be the hospitals that aren't, just to let them know that we are there, to make sure that patients know that we are there, because it is a fundamental right of the patient.
Thank you. And just to know, I've never been part of the UK. So I'm not going down that. This, I'm afraid, will have to be the last question. So,
hi, my name's Tony Kaplan. I'm not sure if it's a question or it's more an observation. I had GBS 45 years plus ago. At the time, there was no medical treatment. Steroids were a possibility, but they didn't give steroids. So it was just physiotherapy and recovery over a 2-year period. I had intensive physiotherapy, very well done by the now defunct Middlesex Hospital in central London. Very good at the rehabilitation, 6 months, and then discharged after 2 years, where that's the recovery time for obviously GBS. What I believe then is what this current government is saying, there's a black hole. The black hole in my case is you're discharged after 2 years, but you live with the effects of GBS. In my case, it left me with a disability, or a walking disability, but you're just left to get on with your life, other than go to GP hospital appointments for various possible complications as you get older in life, as a result of GBS and other things. Other than the only positive thing that I can actually say out of, I suppose, the National Health Service is Stanmore Orthopaedic Hospital supplying me with the AFO foot supports that I've been using for most of that time. But other than that, I just feel let down by the situation. First 2 years, fine, and then 43 years on, I've just been left to cope with life and the pressures it involves.
Thank you, Tony. I mean, this is the perfect question to end on. This is the kind of, for people with GBS, this seems to be one of the really, really big issues. Is, you know, air condition, you discharge, what next? It's the going on things. I would turn to you, but you might. We can come to you. You want it? You want it? No, I don't have to see obviously. Because I think there's a massive emotional impact. Yes, around. Sorry for any writings.
No, I'm happy to answer this, and I want to caveat this by saying I'm not implying that this is a psychological issue. But what I'm suggesting is that maybe some emotional support could help processing that experience, and also trying to open up those channels of communication perhaps with the healthcare professionals. And also, I think processing for yourself the trauma of those 2 years, which sounds like, you know, that will stay with you for a long, long time. So, yes, I don't know if that actually, I realised it wasn't a question, so I'm not really giving an answer, but I suppose to echo my earlier talk about please look after your emotional well-being as well. Tony, yes? Yeah. Tony, your point is really well made, and it's something that we've been talking about as a board. I suffered with GBS 33 years ago when I was pregnant with my son. And came through it, you know, same as yourself. For me, the focus was, once I had my son, put it behind me, move on, because I was 30 years old, I had a new child. It's the same for my husband. We kind of put it in a box and just carried on, but it lives with you the whole time. It's there. We never had any support beyond, but at that time there was no internet. I was talking to the board over there. There was no website. There was no information, and it was you just got on with things. And it's only since I've now come back to the charity, because it's still really raw. Actually, it took away the anger. It took away my pregnancy from me, and it's there. So it's coming back and meeting with this community, and we have been talking about, it's not just the diagnosis, and when you're going through the process, it's, you know, how do we get it in the first place? But then when you come out, the rehabilitation, the emotional support, what do we need to be doing as a charity to be able to support and enhance? Now, there are some things that the NHS, you know, should have in place, and we know all the reasons for, you know, the gaps and things that are there at the moment, and hopefully things will improve. As a charity and the support we offer, the things we were talking about this morning in terms of moving forward, they are on our agenda. We know that they have been missing, and we know that there are things that we want to offer. So it doesn't solve our problems, Tony, you know, those years, but your point is really well made.
Thank you, and that's kind of our job, isn't it? As the support organisation to kind of fill stuff in. Does anyone else want to? I mean, no. Well, in that case, can we say thank you very much to the panel? Thank you for coming up and sitting at the front and answering those questions, and especially if they're thrown at you, which you absolutely know where. Brilliant. Thank you very much. We have a round of applause. So just to kind of finish up the day, if you bear with us a second, Carol's going to give some closing remarks and how the thoughts so go and how the day's gone, actually. So I will disappear now and leave you at the bar.
Thanks, Rich. Well, I am blown away, to be honest with you. I am overwhelmed with your participation, the fact that we've had so many people attend. And I think through talking with people, I think it's long overdue. We can have Zoom meetings, we can do things over Zoom, be that in local groups or board meetings, but there is nothing quite like actually getting people together. And I think the thing that has bowled me over most is the enthusiasm and the energy that's within the room in terms of wanting to move this charity forward. It's been a while. This is the start of a new beginning. You have a board that is totally behind moving this charity forward. We have got a great team in place in Rich there, and Chris has just joined us from marketing. We've re-engaged now with the medical advisory board. We've got fantastic volunteers, our partners in the US, our founders and our patrons who are giving us that support as well. So all I can say is thank you so much for coming. Please continue to give us your feedback because this is the start of an exciting time ahead and for the charity. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. There is just one other person that we owe a huge thanks to today, because when Rich and I started talking about this and we got all fancy and thought, oh yeah, we'll have people in the room and people up on Zoom, then we thought, well, yeah, great. Can we do that? No idea. So I frantically put in a call to an old friend and said, Chris, can we do anything? Chris is not an expert IT people. Chris comes leadership development. She did a lot of work with. We're friends from years gone by, but she said, sort it. I'll sort it. So through Chris and your efforts, we've been able to do this in person and have the guys on the screen. So it's been phenomenal and it's worked. So Chris, we've got a little something for you.
Oh no.
All right. So thank you so much. Thank you.
And I'm volunteering to host the next one. Free of charge everywhere.
So thanks ever so much, everyone. Safe travels home. Some have got longer journeys than others. But I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you to everyone. You go home as well.
Yes. Yeah. Just Wendy, Gerald, Howard, and Roby left. They've been on all day.
Hi, Bruce.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.